Welcome back to part two, Dreaming of America.
So one of the things that I realized is for us very early on, we had to choose whether we pursue in business or general science or general arts or visual arts, which is not necessarily the same thing across the world. At least in the US, students in high school are not
Yeah.
um, expected to choose a path. They only choose a path when they go to college. Do you
Yeah.
think do we think that it is helpful or detrimental to a student having to choose their path so early? And what are your reasons for doing so? And my second question is, do you think the form of examination in high school, the WASI, is effective enough to bring out who the very best students in high school are?
Yeah, we'll take a stab at it, but I think my answer shouldn't be towards any like political answer. I'm not trying to be politically correct over here, but what I think is I will start from the last question. I think the what is not a judgment of who like and what someone should become. I think it is a good examination to test the ability of the students over past materials because there are people that I know that had like bad experiences with the WATSI. Some people put it to I was sick, I wasn't feeling well, so I couldn't go do the English orals. I was not feeling well, so I couldn't go do this. While in the US, before you go to any college, they look at your transcript. Ghana, it's not like that. It's just one exam, like a medical school exam or whatever it is, like in the law school, certainly the US. The whole semester, whatever you study, the coursework that you do doesn't matter. It's just one exam that will show that you'll be able to go or be placed in an A class or something, or you will be able to be one of the best people in the school. I think to me, the system that Ghana also grades the thing. We heard that sometimes when people do so well, they can increase the grading from 80 from for A1 or whatever to 85. It's like being graded on the curve. So if we're going to do something like that, we should have systems in place, right? That will make sure that if all like a student is not good at this area, the students can do this. But we don't have that. The vocational institutions are not that robust. There may be technical institutes. I think now there are some improvements that are going on. But to just write one exam and that to determine who you'll be, it's something I think we can like take a really good look at. But as I said, I know people will come against this answer, but the other thing too is when you grow up in Ghana, we have to know that the system and our culture is different. Maybe a kid would want to be a lawyer, a kid will want to be a pilot. We don't have those systems in place. But I think maybe the people of old thought like, okay, let's put them in this category so that they can easily be at par with the people in the world. Maybe when they are in high school, they learn the Henry Fayol 14 principles of business that some VP or partner at Goldman studied at Harvard Business School. You get to study that in high school in Ghana. Maybe they thought, maybe let's let them play catch up so that when they grow, it won't be something against them. To me, I think it is a good way of thinking, but the liberal arts education, incorporating that with what we have in Ghana, maybe someone can choose to explore business, but not to do business. Maybe the first year, let's look at business, explore science, explore general arts, explore visual arts, explore STEM courses related programs. Then after the second year, you sit with your parents and see, is it the best infrastructure that can help us? And we rethink through that and choose the right courses. But that's my 2 cents. What do you think, Albert?
Oh, I actually concur with you, Mike. I know obviously there are some brilliant minds in Ghana. But sometimes, right, we grow up sort of like looking up onto other people, right? And so the idea usually that shapes the minds of young people is that, oh, I want to be like A, I want to be like B, right? So we might, if we are not careful, we might actually end up sort of like redefining or defining our lives by sort of like, what we've seen growing up, right? Um, Instead of finding our own path in life. And so like a way that high school can help shape us, like, make our decision of exactly what we want to do is sort of like, having mentors, right? So like, something like a mentorship, like even in high school, sort of like you you discuss with your mentor that, oh, I want to do A, B, C, right? And then you don't have to sort of like go ahead and then sort of like choose your elective straight away, right? Maybe you can start with some of the core subjects that are needed, right? But then you don't have to go through and then choose like, your elective straight away. I think that would be really helpful. And regarding the WASI exams, I would say that's not like, a correct, it's not the most accurate, should I say. It has some accuracy to it, but I would say it's not the most accurate because it's a one-time exam. And then also like, what if like what the person went ahead to study, let's say the last minute, so to speak, is what actually ended up coming in the chunk of like, the exam, right? And we usually say Napoa or whatever,
Yeah.
right? So in that scenario, that person might end up sort of like, getting higher than basically he or she should be getting. So like the best approach to this will be sort of like the transcript approach that Michael was saying. So in addition to sort of like using the WASI, maybe like we can also use the metric of transcript so that we also see the performance of that particular student, let's say from year 1 up until the last year, so that we'll now be able to compare that, oh, this actually matches, and then which will sort of like give a better overview of who this person is and then what that person can do. So that's a little bit about what I think.
Yeah, I think all of us make good points as well. I think as I agree with everybody here that WASI is not the most accurate tool to assess the students' capabilities. I think that thinking about it right now, I think it works because we have such a limited resources to truly develop a system that accurately assesses students. The way I'm thinking about it is, as everybody pointed out, I think every single time you go to school must count to how good you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel, and I've always believed that people respond to incentives. And as Albert kind of alluded to, if you go to high school and you don't do anything throughout your whole, you just stay afloat, be fine, go to class here and there, just get to the end, and whatever happens, if you pass the WASI, you're gonna be fine. The problem here is we are giving students the wrong incentive, and we have this saying that the end justifies the means. That is not necessarily true. The end does not justify the means. There has to be a respect for the process. There has to be a respect for how we get to where we're going to. And generally, because and that kind of permeates through our entire education structure, because in JHS you also write the BEC, which is the most important thing in JHS. Whatever you do in JHS from 1 to 3 doesn't matter, it's the BEC that matters. And whatever you do in high school doesn't matter, it's the WASI that matters. You end up creating people or individuals who are much more concerned about what the end is than what it takes to get to the end. And so shifting education system whereby I think if we reduce the quantity of things that students have to learn, but we kind of focus on the quality of what they learn. We kind of try and put more practicality to the things they're learning, kind of evolve it a little bit. We are seeing much more technology shifts in the world. What about we introduce much more coding or much more software into our educational system? What about we kind of, in high school, you can be able to do like debates, you can be able to do all sorts of extracurricular activities based on your own desire to do it. This time, reduce the amount of things that students have to study, and then inculcate that thing into the entire education process, whereby every student has to go through that process. I'm sure you get to college, but going to college in the US, I mean, you have to present almost every week or every 2 weeks, and it can be very daunting when you have had not that much experience of that back in Ghana. And I understand that is hard to achieve because you have a limited number of resources, but everything can be achieved if it's planned for, and if you have the right structure that says that this is what we are trying to get to in the future, then the government can be able to put in a plan, like a long-term plan, and say this is where we want the education system to get to. How do we get there? And then we can be able to get to a point whereby students are now being assessed or evaluated based on the entire performance in high school, how much work they put in from the first day in high school to the very last day. And yes, they can still be able to write a national examination like the WASI, but then going to colleges, it's not just your WASI that matters. There's also whatever work you're able to put in whilst you're in high school that matters. And so it gives students all the right incentives to put their best foot forward, and then be able to showcase that they have understood the things they have been taught inside the term. Because at the end of the day, the truth is WASI does have the understanding component to it, being able to understand principles or theories, but most of it, like for me, at least 50% of whatever you're putting on that paper is just things that you just chewed and you're pouring out, which is not which will not necessarily help you in any way when you get to the highest level. You need to be able to just understand theories, just whatever you've been taught. How can you be able to replicate it and just showcase that you have a deep understanding of what you've been taught? And for me, also, like, in terms of being able to choose your path early, it has pros and cons, of course. I know coming to college in the US, most of the things that I was taught in high school, we ended up doing the first almost 2 years of business school here in the US. So it was very easy for me when I got to the US. So it has its pros and cons. It can help you be more efficient when you go to the higher levels. It puts less pressure on college professors who have I feel like they have less time raising students to become efficient in those small things compared to high school teachers. High school teachers have more patience than college professors. They can be able to take time and explain certain concepts to you. So getting that exposure very early I think is very helpful. But I also think that having the chance to kind of go into all the different aspects into science before you then make that choice, maybe after first year in high school, will be valuable as well. So that's my 1 cent.
Great. Well, so I know we all took the SAT in order to get our full scholarships respectively to the United States. So I wanted to know, like, how did you guys hear about the SAT, and then how would you say that the SAT is different from the WASI exams?
Oh, I will take it first here. I went to Fakra school not knowing what I would do after school. I'm going to be honest. I know my dad went to college, so probably I would have gone to college. But what program like Bismark had chartered accountancy in his mind? Albert, you used to visit your brother in the medical school, so you knew that, hey, if I study hard, I can be like a medical doctor. Bro, I had nothing that I could look up to. Like, my dad did a master's in, I think, agricultural science, which is so different from what I'm doing. So I think it was by the grace of God. You can bet it on chance. You can say maybe coincidence. I went to Opokwaro school when the school was building a new dormitory. So they moved us, some of the new students, into that new dormitory with our seniors who graduated in the 4th year, as Bismarck said. So one guy called IPP, Issa Peter Paul. So IPP was in a seniors dormitory, which was called Cubicle. And he called me over that, hey, as the environmental prefect of Opokwaro school, I'm a kid that to him is a good student. So he would want me to move on to the environment and work. What the environmental workers do is you go and you sweep the compounds of the school, whilst your other colleagues just do the work in the dormitory. So I was excused from scrubbing the bathhouse, scrubbing the dormitory, all those things, and just go work in the environment. So one day I came to his cubicle and just, reports the things that I did. And I saw him with this big book. Like, the book was so voluminous. So I asked him, what's this book? And he said, oh, come here. So, high school is the beds, they have mosquito nets. So he covered us with a mosquito net and he pushed me into his bed. And it's like, don't tell anyone. Because if people get to know, they ridicule you and be like, hey, do you think you want to go abroad? They won't work, this thing won't work. So there's a stigma around it. So I always say till today that what if he was teaching me something bad that day? That influence. What if he was teaching me occultism or something? So he rates me into the bed and he says, okay, this is a book. It's called ACT book. So that wasn't the SAT book. This is ACT book. And if you want to go to school abroad, you have to make sure that you read all this book solve all the practice test questions, and you can get a scholarship to go to school in the US. It's like, oh, is that how it is? So I opened it, and I opened to some of the math questions, and I could solve them. It's like, oh, this is easy then. I can do it. So then he said, okay, there are other sessions. So I opened to the English, and it was so hard. Then I opened the ACT has science, and I had no idea. So then he said, you know, you're a freshman, or you are in Form 1, like Ghana we say. So you have time. So you have to take this, and you have to study it. I was like, okay, can I come and take it every day? And he's like, no, you have to borrow it like once a week. Otherwise, you have to buy your own book. So then my mind, now I'm conditioned to what I can do after school. And that is, you can get the chance to go to abroad. And like Albert, he didn't get to know until he finished later, like he said earlier. He didn't know anything about SAT. So with acquaintances, I asked some of my friends, that time 6-3, BL6-3, Opokori, we use the number system. So I asked them, and he's like, oh, there's a club in this school called the SAT Club. And the SAT is this. So he lectured me on what the exam is. So I joined the club. Wednesdays, they go to meetings. Fridays, they go to meetings right after the evening bell, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Go over the books, but it was so convoluted at that time. I will solve some practice test questions, 2/24. Like I got 2 correct and 22 wrong. But the vision to me was so broad that I cannot let this thing go. So I went to the meetings 2 freshman year, sophomore year, the final year, then I met, no, sophomore year, that's when I met one of the people who were in charge of the SAT club, who was the president at that time. His name is Hayford Boerman, now a medical doctor. So Dr. Hayford now told me that, hey, you are really interested in this. Not that you are a really good student, like you're a really good student when it comes to solving the SAT questions. You are really interested in this. And because of your interest, I can help you. So I was like, okay, so what will I do? He will send me to go buy food for him. I'll be the first person to run, go do it. I will wash his, if I can, wash like his bed sheet, or if anything, but he won't ask you to do those things. And he will maybe say, hey, this is what you do. When you get a school, you have to go into this, do this, common app applications. So Saturdays when OWAS has free years yet, I would just run out of the school and go to the internet cafe and just start like researching about schools. So when he saw my interest, he was like, this guy is really like about this thing. So I will go to him all day, and every like one around him, since he was the president of the SAT club, will be like, this guy is doing too much. Like he's coming to you always. Why do you even allow him? And he's like, no, he's just interested in this thing. Let me help him. So we applied to be people that will take their positions when they leave. So I applied to be the financial secretary of the club since I was doing business, and other people brought the applications in. So after the applications, vetting and everything, they announced and they said they've made me the president of the club. I was like, what? What am I going to tell them? I'm the guy that gets 2 out of 24 out of every practice test. So what do I have to teach these guys? And that's what collaboration comes in. So that time there was a person in our school, Brahima, his name BQ 544, who was really good, and he was scoring and having higher scores in the practice test, and also when he takes other questions examples. So I called him in. I'm like, yo, SAT, what you will do is you will teach them, and I will do the talking, because I'm the one that goes to do the research about the schools and all those things, and you will teach them the actual things concerning the exam. So we structured it. The club grew. Then all of a sudden, we had 2 groups. The same night at first, our predecessors had 1 room, but we had 2 rooms to do our meetings. We were even oversubscribed. Money started coming in. People were so interested. We will go around the school block to propagate this message that we've heard, like Jesus and his disciples. When you are interested in something and you put your heart to it, that thing works. And in our case, it is this book. When you read it and you solve the practice test in it, it will help you get a school in America on a full scholarship. But lo and behold, the president of the club is getting 2/24. But I believe in this thing so much that I started to preach. So we called it SAT, believe and achieve. When you believe, you achieve it. So I remember I'll come to my class. I try to cite some of the people in my class, and they'll be like, no, this thing will never work for you. It won't work. I'm telling you, I know people that did this thing and it never worked for you. Who do you think you are? They said a whole lot of things. That's why I remember Jesus said, a prophet has no honor in his hometown, bro. So they booted me. They didn't really get the idea. I went on with Brian and like-minded individuals. We went on, did the club thing. Now I started to get like 7 out of 24 on the critical reading side. Then it started to come up a little bit. Then what boosted truly my confidence was when Brian applied and got Dartmouth University, which was an Ivy League, on a King Scholarship full ride. So I was like, no, this thing, nah, it's over the top. So it's gonna work for us. So that's how I was introduced to the exam. And by God's grace, I was able to also take it.
You want to tell us a little bit on your perspective on how is the exam itself is different from the WASI? Just real quick.
Yeah. I think it's really different. The SAT tests your acumen on things that probably you've not learned, but they want you to use knowledge from something you know to just apply to it. So let's say you are going to Journey A, but because you've driven before, they want you to use the idea of driving on Journey B to see how you can navigate on Journey A. Whilst the WASI is just like, you are going on Journey A, you remember whatever you used on Journey A, try and use that thing again today. And if you make a mistake, you are out. Whilst the SAT, and sometimes they told us like, there is a question that answer can be 2 or something. I'm like, how? You know, those are some of the things. So it's totally different from the WASI in the sense of approach and in the sense of outcome. One tests your acumen on what you can use your brain to do. The other tests your acumen on what you've learned and if you can remember what you learned.
Quick question: which was more challenging, SAT or WASI?
SAT.
SAT.
Today, if I write the exam, I don't know, bro.
Right.
SAT was the most challenging exam.
Great. Bismark, you want to tell us a little bit about your journey to hearing about SAT and then how, in your perspective too, is different from the WASI?
Well, the problem is that we had to come up with a better story than Michael's. So but I'm going to try. So I was in a Boko school as well. And as Michael alluded to, in a Boko school, we had a scholarship and talents board, which became very prominent and started under a guy named Shadrach, who was completed in 2011, who has gone on to do great things, went to UPenn, went to first UPenn, done his PhD, I think at Oxford or Cambridge, one of those schools, and is back now doing doing medicine. And so there was always that story at the Poko school where some of our seniors who complete school and instead of going to Legon, they'll go straight abroad, or they'll go to Legon and then you hear after a year they're out. They flew out to Legon to UPenn, to Fisk, all these top universities. But I was one of those people who was not ready to listen to the gospel. Okay, so when I was in high school, my main focus was to go to university in Ghana. I remember a friend of mine called Isaac, he was the guy. So in form 3, he was the guy who I shared a bed with. So he was on top of me. He was a big believer in studying the SAT and coming to study abroad. He had all the books. He was so good in terms of the English section, just knowing all the words. They had these like small pieces of paper, like I forgot what the name, but they had this small pieces of paper with the word in the
like a card.
Yeah, a card, correct. And the word with the definition behind the card, and he would just be running through it, right? and other guys too in my dormitory, like Kingsley, like Max Gaffer, they were really into like being able to study the SAT and coming abroad. But I wasn't. So I went through school knowing about the SAT, knowing about people going abroad, but not pursuing it. And then I went to, after school, as I said, I went to Legon to pursue a consumer stats. And after when I went there, it rained. And then you realize that this is hard. You're like, okay, let me now revisit what they were telling, the gospel they were talking to me about in high school. So after first year, I went to, I spoke to my dad. I said, maybe let me try and pursue this SAT. So like when I was in high school, I never wrote any SAT exam when he practiced this. I never pursued it. But then after first year in Legon, I went to Ace Consult at I forgot where is it? Is it Asukwa?
Asukwa Top Martins.
Yeah, you got Asukwa Top Martins. I went there and I was like, my dad, knew about that place, so he said, go check it out. So I went there to Madam Marilyn. I went to her office. She sat me down. We started talking about what's the best path for me. I told her, I'm at Legon. I'm pursuing a Econs Maths Computer Science. And she was like, I think that is a good course to pursue in Ghana. You should complete it since you've already started it. And after that you can pursue your masters abroad. And I listened to this woman, give very good, give a very good advice from her perspective. I went out of her office and I went to Madam Margaret right outside the office and I registered for the SAT classes. I didn't listen to so I registered for the SAT classes and I started taking the classes at Ace Consult for about maybe a month or so. And we'll get into like how the SAT itself went, but it was that was my path to the SAT. So I knew about it very early on. I never pursued it, went into Legon for a while and then decided, let me just give it a try and see how it goes. And so that's how I got into it. Concerning the WASI versus the SAT, I agree with Michael in the sense that SAT doesn't have as much breadth of things that you have to know from a book as WASI. But you need to know some very core principles. And once you know those core principles, you have to be able to apply those principles to various situations. And that's how I think SAT tests you. Whereas with WASI, you have to broaden your horizon and learn so much, have so much information, and just be ready to give out that information when you sit behind the examination paper. To me, I think we think that WASI is easier, but it will be harder for somebody who studied in the US and is just exposed to SAT process or ACT process to write the WASI than it is for somebody who did our education system to write the SAT. Somebody were to come from American high school and go write the WASI examination, all the 8 examinations. I bet he or she is not getting no A in any of them. Maybe English, but even that I'm not sure. I mean, people get 800 in the SAT in English and still get a B. It's like a different ball game. So I think they're both hard in their own ways, depending on what type of student you are. For me, it's not. I can't really say which one is harder than the other.
Great. So as Michael said earlier, I didn't really get the opportunity to know about SAT till after high school. So I had a distant cousin who sort of like was doing his PhD around the time that I finished high school. And so what happened with him was that he was exposed to the SAT quite earlier, and obviously like studying abroad in general, and then abroad travel with sort of like the visa to the US and then even other parts of the world. So he just let my dad know about this exam called SAT. And so my dad, after I graduated from high school, my dad just decided that if I'm just gonna be staying in the house, let me just go take the classes and eventually take the exams. Because and this is sort of like a popular information that getting into medical school in Ghana is extremely tough. So my dad was like, oh, it's either medical school for you or you have to take this thing seriously and eventually go to abroad. And so that is basically how the SAT journey began for me as well. So quite an extraordinary journey, which we obviously talk about in the next episode. But the next episode we have a lot of things to be talking about. Like we'll talk about the planning that went into the SAT, sort of like the tireless efforts, the determination in general, sort of like what kept us going during the tough times. Because I know there were definitely like tough times for us all, like, the practice test extremely tough. We will talk about like, the test days and then like, some of the resources, like, and then the extra classes. And then, in general, some of the books that we had to sort of like engage in. And then most importantly, we'll talk about like, what makes a successful SAT candidate so that like, our viewers and our audience will be able to take some lessons from it, even as, they also try to prepare for this exams as well. So that is what we have for today. But I don't know if Michael, Bismark, you have any last words, and then we can wrap it up for today.
Yeah, I would say that this is a very great initiative and a program that if people would listen and follow this journey, it will surely help them, because we are going to go through the mistakes and the fallbacks, or we will say that the difficult moments that we experienced and how we're able to navigate those. And if you have someone giving you the key to a door, you don't actually have to go get a chisel and a hammer trying to break through the door. And if people will take this thing serious, they will know that it is possible, no matter how it is. We will let you know the cost-effective way to approach the SAT or to approach study abroad if you are willing to take this journey, and also the best ways to get full scholarships to any of the colleges, not just in the US, but in other places that we will be able to also share.
Great. Bismark?
Yeah, I think there are probably like other platforms that share which schools that give full rides, like how to study for the SAT, all those things. And for somebody that's what they just want to be able to go to. But we think that telling the story for people to know the entire story behind how we got where we got to, not just the how to write SAT, but understanding that each person's journey is different, and irrespective of the journey that you have been through, there's still a way where you can still be able to get done or get where you want to be able to get to. And so we're excited to be able to share our journey. And today we're able to share where we came from, how it started, how we got into the SAT experience. Next, we start talking about how the SAT itself went, and then we can be able to share so much information, because by the grace of God, we have been through so much things that we believe will be very impactful to anybody who is able to listen to us, and it will change the whole perspective about studying in the US. Most Ghanaians believe that studying in the US or coming to the US is for them, and hey, there might be somebody who might think might not be for them, but you can rest assured that we're going to tell you the truth and nothing but the truth. And hopefully by the end of the day, you would have so much information and so much arsenal to be able to pursue whatever dream that you have.
Great. So that's it for this podcast. So till we meet next time, peace out.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yo, that was so great.
Next time on the Fakra documentary, Coming to America, we're going to discover the meticulous planning, the tireless efforts, and the unwavering determination that set our heroes on the path to greatness. Don't miss it.